when you think about us back then, what what was it? What was it for you?
I was in love with you. I figured that was obvious. What was it for you?
You were my best friend, and you're about the person I felt at home with and safe with, and I loved you so much. And I felt confused sometimes.
It should be said that this movie actually comes out next week, not this week. I saw it last week, obviously, because I needed to see it to interview these guys. And Mark, you've seen it as well. What did you think?
Here's the thing that's most obvious to say about this. So the film has this kind of, very indie verite feel about it. And because of the use of improvisation, the dialogue feels very, very natural. It almost feels at times like we're eavesdropping on real conversations. And the situation obviously, to some extent, mirrors Page's own life experiences. But there are two stories going on here. One of them is about a trans man going back to meet his family, and the family either dealing with or not dealing with his identity. And the other one is a story about two people who had a connection when they were young, meeting later in life when their situations have changed for both of them, and yet feeling that there is something going on. Now, my suspicion is that actually the latter of those two stories is really the heart of the story, probably for the filmmakers, I would think, because, and if that part of the story works, a lot of it is to do with Hilary Bark, who is it was just fantastic in it. I mean, the fact that her character is deaf and that is never referred to or made an issue at all, it's just part of the character, is sort of completely in keeping with the film. And I do think that in a way, I got the feeling from the film that was really the core to the story. The other side of it, which is the story about somebody going home and then having to deal with their family, and the family, basically, the mother says, I keep wanting to refer to my girl, my little girl, and I keep getting that wrong. And then the father, who has this kind of great conversation about, my son is back home, and then the insufferable brother-in-law who just can't help but pick a fight. All those conversations felt really real, really heartfelt, really personal, and really kind of drawn from experience. Now, I think the thing to say, therefore, is that there are two different things going on in the film, and at different parts of the film, they work better or worse. There were certain times that I felt that the love story needed to be developed more, or not even the love story, the kind of just the rekindled story needed to be developed more. But of course, the stuff that strikes home is that stuff about going back and having those conversations with the family, in which I thought the way in which it was negotiated, that it's really the fact that they're trying to get their heads round who Elliot Page's character is, who Sam is, was really convincingly done, to the point that certain sections of it, I know a lot of it's to do with improvisation, but certain sections of it just felt like they've literally put a camera in a room with two people who are actually having this conversation, which I think is, you're an actor, Ben, you tell me whenever you see something that looks really naturalistic, the chances are it's actually much, it takes a lot of rehearsal to seem that natural. What did you think?
Yeah, I suppose the answer, the response to that thing of like more rehearsal is kind of yes and no, because when you have something like this that is improvised, I remember doing a scene in the series of Boiling Point, the movie, for the BBC, and I was on a blind date with the head chef, and they made sure I didn't even meet her until the cameras were rolling.
Right.
Give it that awkwardness, So sometimes there's actually zero rehearsal, and I wouldn't be surprised if some things in this were completely unrehearsed.
Yeah.
To get those real reactions.
as I understand, there was parameters of discussion, but then the
Sure.
dialogue was improvised. And actually, let's say, again, I haven't heard the interview yet, but hats off to Dominic Savage, who obviously, has a sort of track record of being able to get that kind of, atmosphere completely right on camera with the I Am series. But I mean, I think the point is, we take it for granted that if something looks naturalistic and something looks improvised, it was easy.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's the hardest thing.
Do you agree with me about there being essentially two stories? One of them the coming home story, but the other story being the kind of rekindled story.
Man, I felt like it was two films almost at times.
Okay.
I could easily watch either of them, and they did sort of work. The two side by side, but I agree. I think the home stuff was more explosive in a way, and I just learnt more. I think it's a fascinating film in that I would recommend everybody to see it, because there's so many people still who it's difficult to understand. I think they find it difficult to understand. Maybe not as bad as like you say, the insufferable brother-in-law, but the trans experience. So
Yeah.
I think it's an incredibly helpful film alongside everything else. And that can often mean it's so well-meaning, and it's like too on the nose or too preachy. But I didn't get that from it at all.
Yeah,
it just felt honest and raw.
I don't think it felt preachy. I don't think it felt preachy at all. I do think it felt structurally unbalanced.
Yeah,
but I don't think it ever felt preachy.
And then perhaps that is because you have two stories which could be standalone films or episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that ever fully married up. Almost as if literally Sam had to have a reason to leave that house. There'd be a big blow up. He would leave, and therefore we'd be able to see the other film with him and his long lost love. But it was their relationship was beautifully done as well, and you're 100% right.
Yeah. And I think she's great. I think Hilary Buck is really, really good. And
Hilary Buck, she was in The Sound of Metal, wasn't she?
Yeah, she is. Yeah. And but that thing when she first sees Sam and the kind of the reaction on her face to seeing him is absolute genius.
Yeah. It was so important as well, because didn't you think when you were watching Sam stare at her, like, my first thought was like, oh, he's just staring at a woman, a woman. And it was like it was like a little bit unsettling. So her look back when she realized he's staring is everything. She's got to tell us so much with that look. It was genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, really, really well played. Really well played.